Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of your UFC Hot Takes. As always, if you want to be in these videos in the future, go over to my community tab and find that designated post. Leave a comment underneath that, and you will have a high chance of being in the next video. These videos come out after every single pay-per-view, so be on the lookout for that community post so you can be involved in the next hot take video. Also, if you want to ensure a spot and make sure you make it into this video, go over to my Twitter at Kendall with a 1, KYND1E. Leave a comment underneath that post and you will for sure be in the following video. So without further ado, let's dive right into this. Let's get into your UFC hot takes. Starting off with, we have Ilia smokes Max just as easy as Volk. Max has his hype now and still will, but people forget about how good Ilia is until he actually fights. Now, when I break this down about who I'm going to pick between Ilia and Holloway, I'm leaning towards Ilia right now. Maybe Holloway in the future can convince me otherwise, but Ilia is just that good, and he chinned Volk and he made it look easy. Now, that was a Volk that was coming off of a loss against Islam 4 months prior by head kick TKO. So maybe his chin wasn't all the way there, but we know that Max Holloway has one of the best chins in the sport, and I don't think it's too likely we're going to see Ilia just smoke Holloway in the first, second round. I think this will be a tougher fight for Ilia than any other fight in his career. And with that being said, do I think Ilia Topuria smokes Max Holloway if they fight? No way. I think this will be a tough fight. It will be a competitive fight. I'm going to take Ilia. Maybe he does drop down Holloway at one point. Maybe he does end up hurting him. Maybe he does end up cracking Holloway's chin. I do think Topuria has the power to do that, but I just don't think he smokes Max Holloway as easily as he did Volkanovski. They're two different fighters. They have different styles. Of course, Max Holloway is predominantly a boxer, while Volk can do boxing very well, but Volk is more kind of a back-footed fighter when he strikes. Of course, Volk can come forward. I think he's very dynamic. He has different kind of styles of fighting depending on his opponent, but I think Volk more so leans to being on the back foot. If he is getting pressured, he can fight well off of the back foot, where I do think Holloway kind of strives in a neutral position where they're both in the middle of the octagon, or it's him pressuring forward and landing shots on his opponent or boxing combinations on his opponent. So I think that fight style alone makes Holloway a tougher opponent for Ilia, because Holloway won't just be on the back foot. He'll stand his ground. He'll try to exchange in the pocket with Ilia Topuria, which could be to his detriment, but it also could be to his success as well. Jose Aldo beats O'Malley. Now, I don't really agree with this. I think Jose Aldo has a pretty good chance, and I think he might be underrated at this point in his career. Jose Aldo still has it. He's still good, but I don't think he beats O'Malley. I think Aldo might be a little bit too old. He might not have what he used to have when he fought at featherweight. Obviously, he found a new prime fighting in bantamweight now, but I just don't think Aldo, after taking some time off of the UFC, off of MMA, and pursuing, like, was it bare knuckle, doing some boxing fights, I don't think Aldo is the same guy. Now, he did beat Jonathan Martinez, and he did kind of whoop on him and beat him throughout 3 rounds, which is a good performance from Aldo. But I don't know if Aldo is O'Malley championship level. Let's not forget that Aldo, he lost to Petr Yan. Now, I know that is Petr Yan, and in my opinion, Yan is still a championship level bantamweight, but Aldo losing to Yan is kind of the clearest or the best way for us to predict who would win between Aldo and O'Malley. And obviously you can look at their styles, and maybe Aldo has a good style to beat O'Malley. The way he strikes on the feet, his low kicks might be a problem for O'Malley. Overall, Aldo, I think if he was younger, I think he probably could beat O'Malley, but just an aging Aldo who can be chinned. Let's not forget that. I think if I had to predict it, I think at some point I would pick O'Malley to catch Aldo and chin him, but maybe a younger version of Aldo would get it done over O'Malley. But I just think that the age and him taking time off of the sport, him pretty much retiring not that long ago, it just doesn't make me confident in picking Aldo. But then again, this is MMA, and you never really know. You know, things can happen that are unexpected. A lot of these old veterans get wins that we don't really expect. I mean, just look at Diego Ferreira this past weekend. He just beat an up-and-coming prospect in Mateus Rebecki. But I still think as you get up in the rankings and get towards that championship belt, I think age does play more of a factor, because you're not fighting people who are inexperienced. You're fighting guys who have gone through the ringer, who have fought ranked opponents. And let's be honest here, the UFC is kind of a young man sport for the most part, in the lower weight classes especially, and O'Malley has the age advantage. He can still improve. He hasn't hit 30 yet, I believe, while Aldo is, 37, maybe 38 at this point. It's just looking pretty bad for Aldo. It's still good. I hope he gets some wins. Honestly, I hope he fights a top 5 ranked guy next. And I wouldn't really mind if Aldo fought for the belt. I think Aldo versus O'Malley would be, a dream matchup for a lot of people, and I would be hyped for that fight, honestly. I wouldn't know who to root for. I like Aldo, I like O'Malley, but it would be a crazy fight to watch, and I think that fight would sell and bring some extra cash flow into the UFC for that pay-per-view. Now, this one is kind of long, so I'm going to shorten it for you real quick, but basically what it says here is that Alex Pereira is ducking Magomed Ankalaev. Now, I don't know what's fully going on with Pereira and who he's going to fight next. I think the UFC is trying to make sure Ankalaev stays away from the belt for a little bit of time. I think they want to squeeze as much out of Alex Pereira while he still is champion, because he is getting older. He's 37. There's not going to be much more time that we have with Alex Pereira. And Magomed Ankalaev, let's be honest here, he's not the most entertaining guy. I know he just KO'd Johnny Walker. That's Johnny Walker. He's notorious for being chinny. But other than that, Ankalaev has had some, I would say, pretty boring fights in the UFC. So I can't understand how the UFC would not choose to push Magomed Ankalaev. Obviously, he had that draw with Johnny Walker with the illegal knee. He had some boring fights when he fought Jan Blachowicz. Again, not the most entertaining the way he got the draw. Just grappling up Blachowicz was not the most fun thing to watch. Again, his personality, not really there. I think most Dagestanis, like an Islam or a Habib, have something to offer when in terms of personality, where I think Magomed Ankalaev really lacks that. Like, we all do see clips of Islam with interviews with DC having some funny moments, where Ankalaev doesn't really have that. There's not much relatability to Magomed Ankalaev. He's kind of just another Russian fighter who can make fights boring, and even on the feet when he's striking, it can be quite boring. And obviously with the grappling as well, it's still not too entertaining. So I can see why the UFC would choose not to push Ankalaev. So it really is up to Alex Pereira to call out Ankalaev if he wants to get that fight with him. So obviously, if he does not call out Ankalaev, I think the UFC would be happy to not give him Ankalaev. And if he's calling out Yuri, then they might just run that back, because Yuri is exciting. They wouldn't mind him as champion either. That fight also ended in a weird stoppage, so maybe there is some justification of giving Yuri a rematch. So to say Pereira is ducking Ankalaev, maybe that could be true. I don't know. It could just be the UFC, and maybe Pereira just wants to get that rematch versus Yuri to make his win more credible. But overall, yes, it can be a ducking. Maybe it can't. I don't know. Conor McGregor will never win another fight again. Now, I disagree with this. I think Conor McGregor will win at least one more fight in his career against Michael Chandler. Now, that's a prediction video for later on. I'm not going to dive too deep into that, but I think McGregor is pretty protected by the UFC. They're going to do whatever they can to make sure he gets good matchups. So yeah, you might be able to say if Conor fought a top 5 welterweight or a top 5 lightweight, he possibly loses that. But I still think the UFC will give him the most favorable matchups. Now, we'll see how good Conor is still when he fights Michael Chandler. If he's washed, if he's gone. He's been on gear for a little bit, so he might even come back better. He also is 35, 34, so he is getting up there in age. So it is possible for Conor to never win another fight ever again. He maybe just loses to Chandler, gets KO'd, and then just retires. That could be a possibility as well. We don't really know what's going on with Conor. All we pretty much know is that he's fighting Michael Chandler, and if he beats him, the UFC will probably give him another favorable matchup, if not a title shot, because that's how they do things with Conor. And I say this all the time, the UFC always gets what they want, and if Conor McGregor is going to sell pay-per-views, that is what they want, and they're going to make sure he wins fights by any means necessary. They pretty much did this with the Chandler fight. They've had, I think, over a year to make this fight, but you know what? They're making sure Chandler gets a little bit older. They're making him wait on purpose. They want him to slack. They want him to be off of his game, and that only lends itself to Conor winning. So again, I do think if Conor does beat Chandler, they're going to give him another favorable matchup where the guy might have to do a quick turnaround or do something stupid to where it's more so in Conor's favor. So to cap this off, I do disagree with this. I do think Conor will at least get one more win in the UFC, whether that's against Chandler or against somebody else. I don't know, but I don't think you're entirely wrong for your opinion. I think if you don't believe Conor will win another fight ever again in the UFC. You might just be correct. I think it's a very high possibility as well, but we'll see. We'll see at UFC 303. So with that being said, that concludes my hot take videos. Again, go to my community tab and find that post if you want to be in these in the future. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, hit that bell icon for notifications. I'm out of here. Peace.